Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on our RSA Conference 2024 full conference pass. RSA Conference will take place between May 6th and May 9th in San Francisco and on demand. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC24 and use the code 54USEC Weekly. That's 54USEC Weekly. USEC Weekly. We hope to see you there. All right, now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW348 if you want to check out the show notes from today and the stories that we're going to be talking about. And we've got Mr. Tyler Shields with us. How you doing, Tyler?
Good, Adrian. What is going on, my friend? Hi, Katie. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
We're doing good. We both had chocolate today, I think. It is dark chocolate, National Dark Chocolate Day.
Yeah, it's my least favorite day of the year.
Which is why you're having a glass of bourbon.
Yes, although dark chocolate does go fairly well with bourbon. They do pair well together.
They absolutely do. I may have tried that once or twice, or many, many more times.
Once or twice this week.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Let's see. We were looking for squirrel stories today. I initially didn't have a squirrel story. And we might talk about some of these. There's some really hilarious stuff going on. I was just laughing because I saw that latest one that you put in there, Katie.
We got to at least mention it at the end, right?
Absolutely. But before we get there, we got to talk about funding. Funding is back. We got a ton of funding happening. It looks almost normal. We've got some Series D, some Series C, some early stage, late stage. Quite a few new companies coming out of stealth too.
Yeah, it's this weird state. I think we're in a super weird state of affairs where we're seeing large funding. Not necessarily sizes, but quantity of fundings occurring with more frequency than we have in the past. But simultaneously, we're seeing an increased and continued growth in layoffs, which is this weird, I think, cross-section moment that we're finding most younger startups, cyber startups in particular, in the sense that there's a new crop being born that are off and being healthy and growing in a healthy way. And simultaneously, there's the old crop that overinvested, overgrew, ran out in front of the market too fast and are now having to cut to get back down to reality. And so kind of just a weird moment in time where the negatives and the positives are just they're crossing live streams. They're crossing the streams here.
Yeah, and it's the more I read about the current state of the market and predictions and things like that, the more I see predictions that this year is going to be the year that there'll be a bunch of acquisitions that folks aren't really happy with because that's really their only choice. So I think some of that crossover, we might see some of those startup stories end this year, one way or another.
Yeah, both good, bad, and indifferent. Probably a lot of bad and indifferent. Can't imagine there's going to be too many good stories that pop out of the ZERP era.
Because the free money market ended around Q2 2021. So that
was peak.
Yeah, so we're coming up on 2 years from that. So 2 years from the last time somebody could have easily closed a round of funding that in this environment might not be able to. So yeah, might be drying up some.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be drying up some. I think we're going to see M&A. I've been saying this since last fall, though, so maybe I was just a little bit early, but M&A's got to increase. It just has to increase. There's going to be fire sales. There's going to be technology-only acquisitions. There's going to be acqui-hires, and any company that makes a positive exit at this point in the, let's call it the late A+ round, is going to be doing very, very well, right? That just to make a positive exit at all. It's just been a difficult market for about 18 months.
Yeah.
And the IPO market's still really not great. Do you, or when do you see that coming back?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's stories right now about Sneak and Cato both right on the verge, if not already filing. If not have already filed, they're on the verge of filing to IPO here in the very near future. With the Fed holding flat, the markets are coming back for risk on assets, which companies, high growth companies like Sneak and Cato are considered high risk assets. The market's coming back for those, so I think we're going to see an IPO opening here within the first half of this year. I think we'll see a couple of them finally get out the door. And the first one or two will determine how many of them follow. If the first one or two are not highly successful, the rest of them will go back into hibernation. They'll have seen the groundhog and they'll run for the hills, right? They'll have seen their shadow, and they'll run back into hiding for another 6 to 8 months. So we'll see. It's always fun to armchair quarterback these kind of things. I'm not a pro. This is not financial advice. This is just me pontificating. But I think you're going to see bifurcated, the top end exits will start happening. The smallest companies are starting to get funded again, and those that are caught in the middle, those are the ones that are going to be in a world of trouble, that will struggle.
Well, even if you're just talking Sneak and Cato, you're talking very different types of valuations, right? So
yeah, and there's lots of those multi-billion-dollar plus types of exits that are possible here, and it's going to be interesting to watch how they unfold in the financial markets.
So if I think last week we talked about 3 billion being kind of the new cutoff point for being able to IPO. And if that's true, that gives, I'm looking at my list of unicorns here and their valuations, that there are 15 companies on that list.
When's the last valuation on those, though, Adrian? That's the key thing, right? If your last valuation was at the peak, drop them by 50 to 70%. That's where they're sitting likely today.
Ooh, so I can do that math in my spreadsheet here. I don't think that's going to leave much on the list, but if I didn't, yeah. So some of them are, I think the oldest ones are 2015, and that's Tanium and Illumio. But just going, since there's only 15, I'll just go through the list real quick from the smallest to the biggest. So hanging around 3 is Cato Networks is one of them. Nord Security. Illumio, Transmit Security, and Exonius. And then if you move up to 4, between 4 and 5, you got OneTrust, which laid off 1,000 people at the beginning of this market drop. Arctic Wolf Networks, Abnormal Security, and Acronis, which I'm not terribly familiar with. They're out of Switzerland. And then we jump up to 1Password at 6.8 billion, Sneak at 7.4. Netscope at 7.5 billion, Lacework at 8.3, Tanium at 9, and Wiz at 10. And that wraps up the list.
Yeah, and there's so the way I kind of read those tea leaves is maybe 4, maybe 5 on a if we're really lucky could position themselves for an IPO this year. The remainder, even if the IPO window opens very, very wide, the remainder will likely sit in the wings and continue to grow. Look, these companies that you're talking about here, these are not dying companies. These are just companies that happen to be overvalued on their most recent rounds. They're still growing in a healthy way. Maybe they had to lay some people off to get right-sized and healthy. But these bigger companies, they'll make it. It's just a matter of when, right? So, you'll see 2, 3, 4 of them go this year, and then the remainder of that list will sit back and grow privately for another 2 years plus.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to do the adjustment on the fly here.
So that's supposed to be the cue for Katie and I to dance and sing and entertain our audience.
Any of these fundings that you want to talk about? Any of these interesting?
Yeah, so the first one that jumped out at me is Bastille raising $44 million Series C investment led by Goldman Sachs. The super funny thing is, I don't know if you know the history of Bastille. I don't know the details of the history, but I know it was founded by one of the original founders of that company is Chris Ruland of ISS fame from way back in the day, 20 plus years ago. And I remember speaking to Chris. I believe that company was founded 2014, a decade ago, and now they're taking their C round. So talk about slow growth and talk about consistent growth, maybe, sort of. I don't know how many pivots they've had to take over the years, but back when I spoke to them in 2015, 2014 timeframe, they were a wireless security company that did tracking and triangulation of anything wireless within your physical infrastructure. And they actually had physical boxes you had to put up within your environment. And I don't know what they do today. I haven't actually dove into the bigger storyline there, but they've been around forever. It's a very interesting historic company founded by some people with long backgrounds in cyber.
Well, they did pivot to being what the press release says, leading supplier of wireless threat intelligence technology to high-tech banking and the intelligence community. So they have pivoted, pardon me, somewhat to secure what they're saying, their radio frequency airspace.
Yeah. That's what they were doing a decade ago, was radio frequency airspace. They were securing the airspace in your building, which was novel a decade ago. It was really, really interesting when I got the first demos from it, when they were first maybe 20, 30 people size of that company. You could literally track a person as they moved throughout the environment based off of the fact that they had a cell phone. They were doing things like that, right? Like you'd walk in, they would identify your cell phone, identify the wireless, not even wireless, but also 5G, everything, any kind of radio spectrum communications that were happening, and could physically track you throughout the building, determine what rooms you went into. It was really cool technology back then. And like I said, I don't know where they've taken it since then, but the idea was very unique, which makes sense given a gov audience and given a banking audience that they would want that level of individual human identification and tracking on a facility.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure how much interest is left in this. I mean, it seems like they've pivoted a few times, but they rarely come up. I rarely hear about them at this point. But at the same time, they're not dead yet. Which would suggest that they found a market and they've got some good revenue coming in, because these guys are well over 10 years old at this point, aren't they?
Yeah, founded in 2014. Yeah, so this is their 10th year in operation.
Oh, right at years. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, remember, I believe they were in Innovation Sandbox at some point. I don't think they won, yes, but they were in there.
Yeah, about a decade ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
which is crazy when you think about it, right? Like where were we a decade ago as individuals, right? And this company's been around that long, and they're just now getting their C round. So, I wish them the best. I like the team there for sure. I think some of them were also ex-Endgame people, if I recall correctly, although I could be wrong about that piece of the history.
I think it's a bit of a reminder, though, that there are still, very traditional on-prem, leasing buildings type of environments with large wireless infrastructure that need this kind of stuff. Whereas I think sometimes you get the sense that everybody's working from home, nobody has offices anymore. Clearly enough of that exists for these guys to find a niche.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, we're all predisposed, because I think of our backgrounds, we're predisposed to look at cyber SaaS companies as the kind of penultimate best in class, right? And the reason why they're traditionally considered that is because investors look at them and go 80 to 90% margins, 300, 200 growth rates year over year, right? These are like massively growing companies with really low cost of goods sold. It makes a great investment, right? And so because of that, you generally see massive funding rounds going into these mega growth cyber SaaS style companies, but it doesn't mean they're the only way to make business, and I think, or make money in business. And I think that some of the realization that entrepreneurs are coming to lately is, I don't necessarily have to just do that model to make revenue, right? It's one model that works and I can take heavy VC for, but maybe I can do a more bootstrapped approach, or maybe I can do a healthier growth approach and do a hardware-based technology. There's lots of ways to make money in cyber. It doesn't just have to be a SaaS solution.
Yeah. Agreed. We've also got Torque here, which I don't recall if they've always been security focused. I thought they were more of a Workato competitor, N8N competitor, looking at like iPaaS type stuff, or platform as a service, Zapier, that kind of thing. But they're certainly pitching themselves as SOAR now. Which not sure how much distinction there is there, except where you're focusing for your integrations. The integrations.
Well, they're positioning themselves as hyper automation, which seems to me is an analyst term invention. And even if you look at their website, which I did quickly before this show, IDC is positioning it as the next big thing to take over SOAR. So predicting that SOAR is going to die a very timely death.
Yeah, so we've got two levels of SOAR, right? Like we've got the Phantom and Demisto folks, the originals that got acquired by Splunk and Palo Alto. And then these Rapid7 acquired one that I think is in this category. And then Tynes is the one that a lot of people talk about. They've got a big community supporting them, where you don't even have to build integrations for Tynes. As long as you've got the API documentation, you can build a workflow in like 10 minutes. So, yeah, and we actually had somebody on the show, Brian, what's his name? Works for the shoe company. He's now over at Mandiant. But he's been on the podcast many times, and he was talking about an automation that took him weeks to build with Palo Alto's product. Took him like a day with Rapid7's product. So we see this a lot in security, where it's not a bad idea, it's bad execution. But generally it takes a lot longer than this for somebody to pick up the category again and do it over from scratch with the benefit of hindsight. Like DLP, we've seen that happen with 4 or 5 times now. But it's interesting to see this one, before the old one has died off, to see it picked up again. And I guess these guys are directly competing with Splunk and Palo Alto for this stuff.
Yeah, this to me is a really interesting market. Tynes and Torque are generally the two that I see spoken most frequently of in this space. Really, what is it, right? It's automation. It's automated automation, if that's even a thing, right? In the sense that it can do it itself. It can look at an API and say, oh, I can automate that to this other API over here, and I don't need a human being to necessarily make those mappings and those data translations. It's smart enough to make some of those leaps. Okay, well, what's the real out? Is that a SOAR, or is that a workflow automation platform that happens to be targeted at security workflows? So is the value output more like a better MSSP? Is it increasing your SOC workflows? Is it going to compete more with automated SOC tooling as opposed to SOAR and SIM competition? This one's going to be fun to track as to what it actually disrupts from a market perspective.
Yeah, I remember talking to a NAC vendor. I'm going to blank on their name, based out of the Boston area. You guys might think of it and help me out, but they built in automation, and this is 2010, 2012, something like that, and just let their customers go nuts with it. And some of the most interesting things that customers built were not really security workflows. It was security adjacent. Like the one they like to talk about was, there was a network engineer that their policy said all network ports should be disabled in places where non-employees might be. So conference rooms, for example, you might have guests come in, and you can request they be enabled for meetings in those conference rooms. but that gets submitted as a ticket, and then a network engineer has to manually SSH into that particular switch and type switch port up. And at the end of that meeting, they get a log back into that switch, type switch port down. And that was one of the things they used this product for. They linked the ticket system, within this product to the network infrastructure. So now just a meeting being submitted would automatically bring that port up 5 minutes before the meeting and bring it down 5 minutes after the meeting.
Oh, that's cool.
So just silly things like that, where somebody decides, okay, for compliance, all these network ports need to be off when not in use. And some poor sap somewhere is just is paid $150,000 a year to just turn on and turn off network ports, which is really, really dumb. The software should be doing this.
I'll take that job. You want to pay me $150 a year to turn on and off your network ports, Adrian? I'll do it.
I give you 2 weeks, you'd be screaming for escape.
No, I'd be drinking a lot more bourbon, though. I promise you that much.
Or you would automate it. That's exactly what you would do. You would find some way to automate it. I guarantee it.
Don't tell anybody. Shh.
I don't necessarily, my issue with this isn't what the company's doing or how there is an evolution in this market, right? My issue is that we have this tendency in security to take things that exist, use more current technology on an older problem, not really do anything except make it maybe faster or put in more features that are now possible given more current advancements. And then we call that a market. Mm-hmm. And I think anywhere else
means is this is the way it should have been done the first time.
Yeah, exactly. But anywhere else in the business world, we just call this digital transformation or, the industrial revolution, X point, whatever, right? And in the business world, we just call it progress, right? But in cybersecurity, we create these new names. We create these new so-called categories. And it's not a new category. It's just using what's available at the time because technology is always going to innovate. And so calling this hyper automation, okay, maybe that's a functionality of it, but it's not a new market. So again, nothing about this company or any of the others that have been mentioned, but getting funding predicated on the idea that there is a new market and a new market leader in a new category is wacko to me because it's not a new market. I know, stop laughing at me, Tyler.
No, I'm not laughing at you. I was just going to comment how much we absolutely love and adore Ranting Katie. Like, Ranting Katie should be a meme, and so if the wonderful production staff could do a Ranting Katie meme, I think I would be all behind that.
Like a caricature of Katie flipping a table.
Yes, that would be absolutely ideal. Ranting Katie, and then we could bring it up whenever she goes on a rant, because you're not wrong. Katie, you're not wrong. You're 100% right. That's what makes it a wonderful rant. You're right in every single way.
I mean, in the last week, I've heard hyper automation in air quotes 12 times, and I'm like, is this really a thing? Like, is this really a thing? Like, cars go faster now. We don't call them hyper automobiles.
We should. We should.
Well put, Katie. So my rant on this one was about them calling it an expanded Series B 24 months after their actual Series B in 2021. So yeah,
maybe
totally
they used hyper automation between the raise and the PR.
Totally not a down round. Totally not a 42 million Series C after a 50 million Series B. Let's call it an expanded Series B. Sure. Okay.
Yeah, what that likely is, and when they do that, you can almost always read between the lines that the valuation stayed flat. That's really what it is. We're going to reopen the books, and we're going to keep a flat valuation, but we need a little bit more money to keep going. So who wants to throw some more money at the same price as it was 2 years ago? That's what that is.
Generally, it's going to be the same people, right? Like, they're not going to change the cap table very much.
It depends, right? Like, it depends on whether they get interest, right? So a company like Torque and Tines, like that's an interesting market. It's a unique market. I think it's one of the ones that might have just got caught in the crosshairs of Zerpicorn status, right? And it's just one of those situations where they really might be growing in a healthy enough way to say, hey, if we catch another 40 million, we can extend this runway another 18 to 24 months, ride the market out and start to catch the positive wave back again. So there are some opportunities for extensions of B round style companies, and it just depends on the market, whether it's believed that it could come back with the state of the business, doing the fundraise, things like that. Sometimes it'll be the exact same investors just saying, hey, we still firmly believe in this company, we're going to double down. Other times it might be a different investor who comes in and says, hey, yeah, we want to get involved. So it just depends.
Yeah, and I'm all for these markets. I don't, I don't know if I'm ever going to work for a startup again, but I don't ever want to pay consultants $150,000 to build an integration between my product and ServiceNow ever again. Like, that's just dumb. We kind of need this category of product that links things together in a useful way to exist.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got several AI ones. So those looking to to help with enterprise policy, lock down how people are using generative AI, and then those intended to protect the AI itself. This is something I still haven't had. I'm going to have to set aside time to kind of categorize and make a list of all these companies and figure out like what categories we have here. But yeah, there's no shortage of security and AI coming out of stealth here. Bunch of companies. So one of them is AIM Security.
I'm struggling with security in AI, Adrian. I'm really struggling with security in AI, of AI, around AI. It makes more sense to me to try to grasp the concept of using AI to secure X, right, which is more of an applied AI to a security offering than it is currently to say we secure your AI. Like, I just don't quite grasp how that happens yet. I think part of it is my lack of understanding of the market, and part of it is just a poor definition at this point.
I looked at one of them and it was just a Chrome extension. And so it's literally like man in the middle capturing as you type into chat.openai.com, which okay, like that's weird. And that seems very much like something somebody built over a weekend, to raise money for. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that's something that's really tenable as an enterprise.
The problem is that every company wants a story here because this is where the buzz is. So, hey, if I can see traffic that goes to chat.openai.com and I can look at that traffic and I can inspect that traffic in any way, I'm now an AI security platform. So all your CASBs, all your secure gateways, secure web gateways, your browser extensions, potentially even many of your endpoint protection systems that can look at outbound traffic off an endpoint, they can all claim we secure AI. The reality is they're just trying to hop on the latest buzz train to be a part of something that's growing.
Right. Yep. Yeah, and these are the new ones, Tyler. These are the ones getting new funding. So
I know, so sad.
Welcome to the future.
And it's inevitable. We've seen there haven't been quite as many stories the last year or two as there were, a few years back for funding. But you can be pretty sure that if AI is included in your company name and or its quote mission statement, that there's going to be some level of funding, some more, some less. But if you're an entrepreneur or if you're somebody who's looking for something that helps you get out of the working world quickly, this, you can't really blame people for jumping on the bandwagon here, right?
Yeah, it's like you didn't learn anything.
You know what? That's exactly what I was going to say. Are we going to really just be like, oh yeah, we're doing it again. We're over investing in something that doesn't do squat, that actually doesn't secure anything, that's a hyped up, the next crypto space. Here's the thing. for every dozen, 15, 20, whatever the magic number is, companies that investors put money in because they are AI security companies, for every 15 to 20 of them, one of them might actually have a good idea, right? And the funny thing is, you got to look at the incentives of VCs. If you get one of them and you hit that one that's hyper successful, I can write off 15 other losses, 20 other losses to go to zero. I don't really care as long as that one is a behemoth. And so that's why you see so much funding that sloshes around on hot areas.
Yeah. Right, and I think we either talked about it or maybe I wrote about it, I can't remember. You can't really blame the people who are building the products and are marketing the products. This is purely a VC game, and they're willing to take the risk. And as long as they're willing to take the risk that 1 out of 15 or whatever their calculation is going to pay off for them, then they're feeding the frenzy, right? They're saying, come on, give it a try.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, and
I wish I could think of something really stupid and make a lot of money in a week.
Yeah, I'm not willing to. Like it's got to be. It doesn't work for me. I'm not good at faking it. It's got to be something I'm really excited about, really passionate about.
Well, that's why I haven't invented anything.
Right.
Not technology.
That's why we're on this podcast.
I invent things like cake.
So yeah, I mean, P0 looks interesting, and that's an older one. I don't know how that got into the mix. That was announced back in November 2023, but secure access into cloud stuff like IAM in the cloud is really complicated and difficult. Sounds boring, but probably really worthwhile problem to solve here. A lot of the breaches that we see are, malware getting on engineers' laptops and attackers having an easy time getting into a company's entire cloud infrastructure. So, yeah, that's something that actually reflects actual incidents, failures, breaches that we're seeing. So that's something I can get behind.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been harping on this for at least 12 years, and I'm giving a talk on it in 2 weeks. Like, it's the fundamentals. None of it's sexy. None of it's fun for, people who are like, to borrow a term, hyper adopters of new technology. But at the end of the day, it's the basic fundamental stuff that's going to make the biggest impact.
Yep.
I do like the name. P0, priority zero. Access is our priority zero, which I think that's a cute little tagline.
Yeah, solid messaging. Yeah, I like it. So we've got an acquisition here. The CyberY acquires the Reformed Analyst.
You would not believe what we had to pay for that acquisition. It was extremely expensive. I ordered it on Prime. Oh, there it is. Look what I had to pay to do this acquisition of the Reform Analyst newsletter, which a wonderful newsletter. I had to send her all those chocolates. For those that don't see live, Katie was holding up a massive box of hopefully good high-end chocolate. I tried to get you good stuff, Katie.
It's very sad that you don't know what good chocolate is, Tyler, but yes, it's delicious.
There is no such thing as good chocolate. It's all garbage. It's chocolate. And even on National Chocolate Day, I'm going to disparage chocolate.
Wow.
So for those that don't know, Katie, just to complete the story, sorry to jump over you there, Adrian, because I realize that people probably don't know. Katie writes for the Reformed Analyst. It's her newsletter and her Substack. She's actually deciding to write alongside me at the CyberY, and Adrian occasionally, and Rick Holland, who also helps us contribute to content at the CyberY. So it's kind of a faux acquisition, but I love having Katie writing for us, and we look to see some amazing content coming out of Katie. So if you're not already a subscriber to the CyberY and you're interested in what Katie has to say, definitely subscribe to the CyberY. She'll be putting out her first article next week, I believe.
Nice. Very cool. And
it's not as snarky as some, so I'm not bringing my typical stuff to it. But this one covers the Data Act, Tyler only had one comment, wondering if my grammar was indeed correct or if I was being ridiculous, and I was being ridiculous. So most of it is a pretty straightforward article about the upcoming Data Act in the EU, but there are little sprinkles of sarcasm in there.
Yes, definitely love it.
All right. Let's see what else we have here. Layoffs have not stopped. Proofpoint is laying off 280 employees, about 6% of its workforce. They've been doing a ton of acquisitions, so I imagine that's where maybe some of those are coming, but I've heard a lot of them are researchers, so there's going to be a lot of good folks on the market for other companies to pick up. But yeah, I kind of thought the market was rebounding enough that we wouldn't continue to see layoffs, but clearly we are. Improvement.
Well, I think you bring up an interesting. I think you bring up an interesting point, Adrian. That I don't think people necessarily put two and two together, right? If we're seeing a large number of M&A occurring because of the state of the macro markets and situations where it makes sense to buy companies that are in a little bit of dire straits or a little bit of a growth issue but have great technology, there's natural overhead impacts that come out of that. So I think simultaneously to seeing M&A occurring on that front, you'll see companies that are acquisitive also laying people off simultaneously, which feels counterintuitive to spend $100 million on a company while laying off 10% of your workforce, but it actually does make sense from a business perspective, as and at the end of the day, the cybersecurity market, I saw somebody tweet this yesterday and it caught my eye. The cybersecurity market is cold. Cybersecurity startups and businesses are cold and logical, period. And if it makes sense to lay off 100 people, 1,000 people, they're going to do it, right? And it's just the way business is. As sad as that is, you do 2 or 3 acquisitions, you have overlap in some of the G&A and sales and marketing functions, cold them, kill them, knock them off, right? Lay them off. Has very little to do with any of the human beings in that situation, which it makes it very sad, but it's logical and it makes sense from a business perspective.
And every time they've done an acquisition, a few months later, there have been layoffs. This is very, very typical in the market, and it's somewhat expected. I think at this point, I've been through a few acquisitions at companies or saw the writing on the wall and generally got out before that. But and especially in a market where we're bound to see more M&A in the coming months, it just makes sense. If you acquire a technology to supplement your portfolio, and it in any way overlaps, there's certain functions that just aren't going to be needed in such high numbers. But the good news for most security people is that there are plenty of jobs available. It might be harder in other areas of the business than if you're a hands-on keyboards security practitioner. But this is very normal behavior, and I just think we have to be careful not to position it as, oh my goodness, we have layoffs, this company's in trouble. That's not what it means at all. Not necessarily, at least.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's 6% of the company is not end of the world. For a company that's fairly mature, that's been public, taken private. The fact that it was taken private and it's PE owned now, is another part of it makes it even less surprising, right? That's what a private equity shop's going to do.
Right, and this doesn't specify, nor should it, who in the company's getting laid off. My guess is there's a lot of support staff. You don't need 2 marketing teams necessarily coming together if a product is going to be part of a larger portfolio. You don't necessarily need 2x the amount of finance teams or whatever. It very much depends on the scenario. So 6% isn't a lot, and this also is not like a big giant warning for security people in any sense.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to kind of rapid fire go through some things, and we can come back to any that sound interesting, just because we're not going to have time to go through all this stuff. Number 14, interesting essay. I think this is from Ross Haliluk. enmeshment in security. He's basically talking about the blurring of boundaries between products and services. There's some good conversations I was having on his LinkedIn posts related to this. Because we've been touching on that for a while now. We've been watching companies like Arctic Wolf, that you would traditionally think of as services companies, having an easier time growing and raising funds than pure software startups. So that's basically what that essay is about. We've got another one on quitting time. This one's from Professor Scott Galloway, talking about basically career advice when it's time to quit. I thought this was a really good post. The one Katie mentioned last week, the hero culture in cybersecurity. I think this is also, we've got Ross in here way too much. This is the second one.
He puts out great content. It's easy to include him.
Yeah. So I mean, if you don't follow the newsletter Venture and Security, his thing, it's definitely a lot of thoughtful reads. We disagree with them sometimes, but definitely good reads. And that one reminded me of Brent from the Phoenix Project. The classic kind of story-based IT book. That describes some of the the bad patterns, negative patterns in tech, and how tech departments, IT gets gummed up. What else here? So a couple, Ross gets a third call out because he put out a book, and he was just kind of just impressed with the amount of fraud that's occurring on Goodreads, on Amazon, related to his book. Basically, people are using AI and just generating knockoff copies of his book, and it's pretty much all on him to get them taken down. Like Amazon's not doing that, allowing all this fraud on their platforms. And 404 Media, which is some journalists who left Vice Motherboard. I'm a big fan of their content. They've put out some killer stories in the last 6 months since they launched. Some amazing exclusives. They do all kinds of Freedom of Information Act requests, which is where some of them have come from. And they're getting hit with fraud too. Copies of their stories just end up on different places, just word for word reproduced, or they'll use AI to rewrite the article so that it doesn't get flagged as the same article. And yeah, they're struggling with the same thing to the point where they don't want to put up a paywall, but they feel like they've got to make you log in now because it's so easy for their content to get scraped, run through AI to scramble it so it doesn't look like the exact same thing, and then put up somewhere else.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible.
It's horrible, but how does email addresses? I mean, I guess it limits.
So you have to log in to read the content.
Right, but if you log in and you're logged in, you can take that and put it somewhere.
I don't think. Yeah, sure, you could. But I don't know that they're going to that extent at this point. The people who are copying this stuff aren't just doing it to 404 Media. I think it's very opportunistic, where they're just just setting up bots to scrape sites, and I imagine the whole thing's automated.
Oh, sure. I'm just thinking that in terms of this, I understand why 404 is doing what it's doing, but it's not going to be enough. It's absolutely not, because if I'm a subscriber and I say, hey, Adrian, hey, Tyler, I want you to read this article, but you're not a subscriber, it's easy enough to copy paste it. It's easy enough to archive IS it. It's not necessarily ethical, but this kind of thing happens all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not enough.
There's a very interesting reinvention of journalism and media occurring literally as we speak right now. And I think in some ways the Cyber Y plays into it. In some ways, I think this podcast plays into it. Where I was listening to All In Pod just the other day talk about this specific topic. And in a nutshell, really what it is we've no longer are required to go to a group that does journalistic reporting when we can go directly to the source of the content now. Take, for example, in cybersecurity, in our little niche world, Ross is putting out great research, first order research that he executes, he writes, and he puts out, right? This is not just reporting on news. This is his research. He's putting it out. I go and we go here on the show and we take his stuff and we say, hey, Ross put this out. Here's our commentary on it. We're creating derived works on it. We're not stealing it by any means. But my point is, you don't really need to go to our version of it. You can literally go read Ross Adventure and Security and consume his amazing content directly. And I think the world of news is largely connected to this concept of derived works. And that is being disintermediated, I think is the correct word there. And people are creating newsletters and smart people are creating direct to media type of solutions. And what we're seeing is people recognize this and they're saying, hey, I can scrape all of that and I can create my own derived works and I can muddy the waters on the back of that. I think we're just in a really unique spot when it comes to journalism, when it comes to media, when it comes to reporting, when it comes to telling stories as a whole. And I've been putting a lot of thought into this just around the cyber why and how I in 2024 this year want the cyber why to be putting out more unique stories in addition to the curated content that we put together. Because at the end of the day, I want to be the person, I want to be the default people that people go to ask what's going on in cyber business or what's going on in cyber threats, right? And so I think that we're seeing a reinvention in kind of how media actually works in cyber and across the board.
Well, I think it goes even broader than that. I think this gets us into the topic of what's happening with SEO and search engines. You know, search engines these days, I think almost everybody has noticed they can't find stuff with search engines anymore. You know, it's just full of, like, everybody's figured out how the search engines work and can basically hijack them. And so in 404's article here, you know, they say a company called Byword gleefully advertises how they can steal other people's SEO, pull off an SEO heist, their words, and steal 3.6 million total traffic from a competitor. And they show it's actually a tool for doing that, where you basically export the competitor's sitemap and create AI-generated versions of thousands of their articles. And it creates like images for the articles and everything. Like, the articles are no good, but you're not writing them for people, you're writing them for search engines. And I think this is going to kill, you know, now we're seeing these kind of offshoots, you know, that may use some of Google's search results, you know, like they actually license stuff from Google. Like, I know U.com does that, but they pull out all the sponsored links, they pull out all the crap, they're integrating some AI LLM stuff. Honestly, for a lot of stuff, I just go to ChatGPT these days to find things. Like, I've just
and that's what I'm hearing across the board is that Gen AI and ChatGPT and Bard and Claude will replace search. That will be the next revision of search because it can be tailored specific to what you need and what you're looking for as an individual. It'll go and understand the difference between true first order content and derived content or dirtied content, as we're talking about here with this SEO storyline. That they're saying that ChatGPT becomes the search killer.
Potentially in the future, because you have to keep in mind that a lot of things that you might want to search for, like the EU Data Act that I'm talking about, you can't find stuff like that in ChatGPT yet. It's not current enough. It's not there. It's not available. They don't have enough data.
ChatGPT just searches the internet. It does it in real time.
Yeah,
most of the
but
stuff
it doesn't come up with anything. Yeah, so no, it's not the same data necessarily. Any new compliance, because I've written about a whole bunch of stuff, and I do occasionally go to ChatGPT to look it up. And the answer that I get more often than not when it comes to laws, compliance regulations, etc., anything after 2022 is not available.
Are you using Pro? ChatGPT Pro, where you pay $20 a month?
if you're depending on the training model for that information, then yeah, it's going to be linked to a date. But if all the current versions, like ChatGPT 4, is now linked to the internet, and if it thinks it needs to search the internet for something, it'll do that the same way you would.
Yeah, and I believe it requires a pro subscription to use the internet search capability of ChatGPT 4. That's why I asked if Katie was using the $20 a month or $10 a month or whatever it is pro version of ChatGPT. If you are, it will literally give you all of the modern search results on top of its own data. Now, the problem with ChatGPT, and the thing that I think still is holding it back from becoming a dominant force, is the speed. When you go to Google and you type in EU Data Act, it dumps out 20 links in about not even 3 seconds, like 0.3 of a second. The answer is just there. You go to ChatGPT, it's got to think about it. It's got to look around. It's got to consider. It might take 10, 15 seconds. And people don't have patience anymore. They don't have the patience to wait that extra 15 to 20 seconds to get a ChatGPT version. So I think that little bit of time commit might be the thing that slows down the adoption here.
Getting faster.
Sure, and I can see that. I was definitely wrong there, because in this particular case, I just went to ChatGPT to see if there's anything that I missed. It depends who you are. If waiting that 10, 15 seconds, you can go and you can check an email that just came in your inbox. If you're the kind of person who goes, yeah, I want deeper results, you're going to go respond to that one email and then come back and it's going to be great. But
So if you guys have iPhones, I would suggest checking out Arc Search. There's a new app that just came out from the browser company. So same company that makes the Arc browser created a new iPhone app called Arc Search. And what it does is when you put in what you're searching for, it'll automatically browse like a dozen sites all at once and give you a summary for what you're looking for. So instead of you having to read a whole bunch of sites and figure out what you're looking for, it'll automatically create a summary out of that.
Is this a 2024 version of Ask Jeeves?
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, it is. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's doing exactly what you would do and cutting out, the 5 minutes you would need to browse each of those sites. And then, the formatting looks great. Yeah. I wish I could show you, like I asked it for Microsoft security products for like a summary of their security products. It's amazing. It put it together exactly how I would have written it.
All right. It's on the to install list.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting seeing what companies are doing with this technology and where it's going. But I think traditional search is dying. Let's see what else here. We don't really have time to go into this quantum thing, but it's some kind of quantum network where if it's observed, it kind of acts like an IDS. It sends you an alert if anything on the quantum network was observed. I don't know. It very much feels like technology in search of a problem. That it's a problem that I don't have. So. Unless I'm missing something there, but it's I'm actually writing up a piece for the CyberWhy about it. So look for that in a week or so when I finish my research into that. Everybody's been talking about the mother of all breaches, which is essentially just an omnibus edition of a bunch of breaches that have happened before. Somebody just tried to compile all the past breaches into one big zip file, and everybody's freaking out about it this week. But I don't think there's anything to really freak out about. Like if you've already
not at all.
It's the same data.
That's the news that doesn't matter.
Yep. So yeah, you move on. It's a distraction. Don't worry about that. Number 23, some interesting kind of like a wrap up, a taxonomical ontology of prompt hacking techniques. So pretty cool if you want to get into prompt hacking, understand all the different techniques you can use to fool AI LLMs. And there's also a meta-analysis of CISO surveys from 2023 that somebody published. That's story number 24, or actually it might be rearranged now. Yeah, I rearranged, so that's now story number 23. And that brings us to our squirrel story. unless you guys want to discuss any of those previous things I just mentioned, we can jump into washing machines.
No, we definitely need to jump into the washing machine. That's a must discuss.
So I was very disappointed by this article. So the headline here is your washing machine could be sending 3.7 gigabytes of data a day. And somebody basically monitored their washing machine on their network and saw it sending off 3.66 gigs of traffic a day. Their LG Smart Laundry washing machine. And there's questions as to whether or not that tracking was accurate. What was in the traffic? It's a very disappointing article because the analysis of the traffic never happens. So if anybody wants to send me PCAPs of their washing machine traffic, I will analyze it for you because I'm very frustrated right now that there is no analysis of this. There's no answer to this. It's just all conjecture based off a single tweet where somebody tweeted out a graph of the volume of data that their LG washing machine was sending out.
So, Adrian, I will tell you, I have an LG that is an internet-connected LG washing machine and dryer. I did not connect it to the internet because I just didn't quite understand why to even bother doing that. But if I get some time over the weekend, no promises, and I connect it to the internet, I can capture the traffic, I'll kick it your way. Somehow I doubt it'll be capturing 3.6 gig of traffic, but we'll take a look and see what we can generate out there. And then for those of you that aren't watching on video, Adrian looks like an 8-year-old kid on Christmas morning. He is shaking and giddy with excitement.
I love you, Tyler.
You got it, buddy. It had to be a crypto mining hack. It had to be. It's got to be a crypto mining hack. Somebody's using the compute systems for crypto mining or something like that. There's no way that this thing is sending off 3.6 gig of... What is it sending? That like every time the stupid thing does a circle, it sends out a packet saying, hey, we did another circle. I mean, what is it literally sending to do over 3 gig of
look
traffic?
How consistent that is. It's like every hour, it's like 150 megs an hour, or is that every 30? No, it's hourly. Sending out like 160 megs an hour, and there's almost no spikes or dips. It's super consistent. So crypto miner makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be a crypto miner, or something like some kind of DDoS component where it just so happened that the guy did a capture when it was participating in a denial of service attack. Tough to know exactly what it is, but it's got to be some kind of malicious attack.
But the best thing about this story are the puns and the jokes that the owner of the washing machine makes. So he was joking the device might be using Wi-Fi for DLCs, downloadable laundry cycles. He made another joke about renting out his LPU, his laundry processing unit, by the hour.
And then the best one, Adrian, the best one is that it could improve its LLM, its large laundry model.
That's great. Those are great.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Looks like the favorite answer to the data mystery is to blame Asus for misreporting it, which is where he got the graph, his Asus router. So I'll be looking forward to that PCAP, Tyler.
Oh, man. Well, I got to set it all up on the internets and all that kind of stuff. I've had this washer and dryer combo for many, many years now. I've never even set it up because I just don't understand why I need my washer and dryer to be on the internet. So I never bothered. But if I get around to it, no promises. I got a lot of stuff going on. I will send you the PCAPs.
Nice. All right. We can look forward to that. And we can look forward to the new content coming out of the CyberY with Katie there now. And we can look forward to next week's show. Thank you, Katie and Tyler, for joining me today, and everybody who's watching and listening. And we'll see you next week.